President Trump fired James Comey, but now he has to deal with a different FBI director. It's been just over a week since Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appointed former Director Robert Mueller to serve as special counsel for the probe into potential Trump-Russia ties. And Mueller is already getting down to business, working on an operational budget for his investigation. Former Maryland Attorney General Doug Gansler is in Washington, and he joins me now. Doug, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So you've actually worked with both Rod Rosenstein and Robert Mueller. What are these two men like to work with?
Well, I have. I worked when I was State's Attorney in Montgomery County, then Attorney General of Maryland. During that whole time, Rod Rosenstein was the United States Attorney for the state of Maryland, and we worked closely together on a number of cases. And then Bob Mueller was actually my boss in the homicide section at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And they both share some common traits, which is you can trust both of them. They are both above reproach. They are both not subject to political winds. They won't sort of be subject to people trying to influence them one way or the other. They're going to look at the facts, apply those facts to the law, and they will come out with the right result. They also will not seek public attention. They won't conduct their investigation in public. They'll do it behind closed doors where it should be, and then we'll hear from them when they've concluded their investigation.
Well, based on your answer then, I take it you think Rosenstein made the right choice for special counsel.
Well, I think he did two things. I think he had to appoint a special counsel. You remember at the beginning he was saying, well, I'm not sure I need a special counsel, because we all know that he wouldn't, because he would be able to do this without conflict. The problem was there was an appearance of conflict because the credibility of the Department of Justice as a whole really was compromised during the last few weeks with this memo that they had Rod Rosenstein write, and then trying to throw him under the bus for it, and then reversing it with President Trump saying, in fact, he was responsible. Donald Trump was responsible for the firing of Director Comey. And then you have sort of the sideshow of General Sessions, who says, I'm recusing myself from the investigation, but I'm not going to recuse myself from firing the person in charge of the investigation. So I think they had to hire a special counsel, and I think Bob Mueller was the absolute correct and right choice. He's apolitical. He was appointed by a Republican. He served through a Democrat, as did Rod Rosenstein. So I think that was the right decision to appoint a special counsel and the right person for the job.
On the Rosenstein memo, I'm just curious, have you talked to Rod Rosenstein, or do you know what his reaction was to the White House's use of it when Comey was fired?
Well, I haven't talked to him directly since that time, but I think the reaction was pretty clear what happened, right? They asked him to write a memorandum that could justify the firing of Director Comey, or some of the things that he, in Rod Rosenstein's view, had done wrong. And he did, in fact, draft that memorandum. What then happened, though, is that memorandum became a political tool for the entire Trump administration for that day to say, well, see, it was Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein's idea to fire Director Comey, which was preposterous on two levels. One, Rod Rosenstein would not get involved in that. And two, the Deputy Attorney General of the United States would not have the authority to fire the director of the FBI. That would be something that is extremely rare. I mean, J. Edgar Hoover was not fired by any president. You know, William Sessions was fired because of ethical considerations. And the reason why Director Comey was fired was none other than Director Comey was escalating the investigation into Donald Trump and his administration, and the very next day he gets fired. Everything that Rod Rosenstein put in the memorandum had existed for months, and nothing was happening to Director Comey other than Donald Trump being his biggest cheerleader. So when they tried to then throw Rod Rosenstein under the bus, he clearly pushed back, and in complete Rod Rosenstein form, it was not public. He was behind the scenes, so that by the end of that very day, Donald Trump was taking responsibility. What was then interesting is they were trying to throw him under the bus as being the GOAT. He then becomes the hero, Rod Rosenstein does, by appointing a special counsel, by not giving Donald Trump or the administration any warning as to the fact that he was going to do it and who it was going to be. And now what Donald Trump basically did by firing Director Comey is he bought himself Bob Mueller and his investigation, and now goes from potentially being protected to being actually in potential impeachment territory.
On the special counsel, is it a problem that James Comey and Robert Mueller have a relationship?
Well, it's a positive thing. I mean, you know, I think that Bob Mueller can't do this by himself. He needs the FBI to cooperate. James Comey had an incredible reputation within the FBI, supported very much by his troops, if you will. And what happens in these investigations also, which should be made clear, and I don't think hasn't been made very clear, is that there are other investigations going on, the Senate, the House, and so forth. And those are a bunch of politicians. They're not lawyers necessarily. In fact, most of them are not. And they're out there trying to get political gain by having these hearings. Bob Mueller's investigation is a real investigation conducted by a real prosecutor. Director Comey understands that, and Director Comey shouldn't do anything that would harm or hinder Bob Mueller's investigation. So he, in fact, should talk to Bob Mueller about what Bob Mueller's view is, not as to the content of what he should say, but whether or not he should actually appear at these hearings and in what capacity.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions, as you know, has recused himself from any Russia investigations because of his failure to disclose meetings with Russian officials. But does Mueller ultimately still have to answer to Sessions' Justice Department in his own investigation?
Well, it's a little unclear, right? Because Attorney General Sessions said, I'm going to recuse myself. He had said that in the past, and then was obviously part and parcel of the firing of Director Comey. So he wasn't involved in the investigation. He just felt that it was appropriate to be part of the firing of the person running that investigation. So you would think that he would understand that he should stay out of it, at least publicly, and I think it sounds like behind the scenes as well. Rod Rosenstein is involved with overseeing the investigation of Bob Mueller. So one would think that Jeff Sessions would stay out of it at this point and should stay out of it at this point, though technically I suppose he could always rescind that, as could Donald Trump. I mean, Donald Trump could technically fire Bob Mueller any day. It would probably not look too good, but he could still do that, as could Jeff Sessions. But from all public appearances and all public statements, at least, Rod Rosenstein is running point for the Department of Justice at this point as Bob Mueller conducts his independent investigation as special counsel.
Finally, Doug, do you think this special counsel will quell some Democrats' cries of impeachment for the time being?
I think it should. The Democrats should recognize the impartiality of Bob Mueller and of Rod Rosenstein, for that matter. Let the investigation take its course. There's nothing to impeach Donald Trump on right now. There's no smoking gun. There's no hard facts. They should allow the investigation to play itself out. Bob Mueller's not, he understands the implications here. And by the way, it may show there was no connection. I mean, we're all jumping to conclusions. There's a lot of reason to think there was a connection. But the great thing about a Bob Mueller and a Rod Rosenstein is they're not going to be influenced by these outside conversations, the conversation we're having right now, or any other conversation. They're going to actually look at the facts. They're going to subpoena the records. They're going to subpoena the witnesses. They're going to conduct grand jury investigations. And at the end of the day, they're going to come out with a report or a finding. And the Democrats and the Republicans should and will respect that report.
Doug Gansler in Washington, appreciate the insight. Thanks.
Thank you.